Hi everyone. So I have Moshe Mikanovsky with me today. Moshe, can you say a few things about yourself? So basically where you work currently, all your different projects, because I know you're super busy both in, the product field and elsewhere.
Mhm. Yes, for sure. So my name is Moshe Mikanovsky, and my background is in software development and product management. I've been building software digital products for the last 30 years, 10 years, the last 10 years in product management. These days, I'm working for a recruitment company called Procom in Canada. I live in Toronto. And yeah, I'm also have some other side hustles that I'm working on. One of them is a podcast that I'm co-hosting with my friend Matt Green. It's called Product for Product, and we are talking over there about products that product people are using. So the different stacks that we're using, how we use them, and stuff like that. I'm also trying to be creative, so I'm creating different things. The painting in my bag, I used to paint in the past, so these are my paintings. And I recently got a book that I wrote into publishing. It was accepted to publishing. It's called The Resurrector, and it's a fictional book, and it will be released hopefully in December 2021.
This is great. Like I was cheering you on with this project on LinkedIn as well, and it's
Hmm.
it's great to hear also, you know, um, to see the other side of our guests, right? So
Hmm.
usually on LinkedIn, everybody just talks about their companies and the
Right.
professional side. So sometimes I wonder, like, how much of myself can I really show in
Hmm.
my posts on social media, right? So it's great
Yeah.
to see other people also doing that and opening up. And I feel like it paves the way to building like a lot more valuable connections also, as
Hmm.
people, and understanding, what we are doing in context a lot better,
Hmm.
because after all, product management, product marketing is all about understanding people, understanding psychology and our users,
Right.
which is something we will be talking about. So
Hmm.
you are going to speak at Product Drive about project-led versus product-led versus sales-led versus solution-led. Can
Yes.
someone clear the noise? So, obviously my first question, can you clear some noise for me? Because I'm also confused about all this terminology.
Yes. So there are many different ways to build products, and there are better ways and there are not so good ways. But the practice around the world and around companies is really driven by many different things. And some of them are driven by projects. We need to make these happen and we need to make it done by this specific time. Some of them are driven by sales. There are this push from sale to get things done, promises made to people, promises made to clients, and stuff like that. So there is really a lot of noise about all of these different type of uh, development of products, and so some of the noise, it's not like specific frameworks, but it's more about what are these all about, and also what are the pros and cons for each one of them. I'm biased, of course, so I'm probably going to lead into a specific place. But I also gained a lot of empathy during my career, and for sales, especially in the last month while I was trying to pre-sell my book. So I was standing on that side of the coin. Uh, so it's really trying to understand all of these and clearing that noise a bit and see where people can take it farther in their practice.
Is there really a contradiction between all these different perspectives, right? Because after all,
Hmm.
we sort of have a common goal. Obviously, there are the business goals, and
Hmm. Hmm.
the like the sales quotas, which you mentioned. There are the product perspective of building features, but ultimately, we all want to deliver more value to the users, right?
Hmm.
So.
Hmm.
Isn't it possible to have a sales team and keep them happy and still, be product led?
Hmm. I'm sure there is a way to that. I think that many companies have to find it on their own. It's very hard to prescribe it and say you have to do it that way. But the idea here is really to look into outcomes and finding the product market fit. When you look into things like that, your outcomes are going to be much more shared between the sales organization and the product organization. And once you're sharing them, you can collaborate in a much better way. And therefore, you can definitely live together and be happy about it. The idea is to reduce this tension by having same goals, same objectives, trying to get into the same outcomes. Each one is doing it in their own way, and each one has a part in that. The stress is starting when people don't have the same goals and when you do go in different directions.
Yeah, and when you start like kind of pointing fingers at different departments and basically blaming them for, I don't know, not having enough MQLs, right? Or blaming the product for not having a clear enough roadmap so, you know, you can sell better, et cetera, et cetera. I've experienced this kind of pushback from, for instance, sales in the past. So it definitely resonates, but after all, yeah, we do have the same goal. It's just also about what you mentioned, the empathy to understand like why there are certain limitations in the other departments, right? Like why can't product just, you know, add this one feature request like that, right?
Yeah.
How do you, I wonder, understand being product led? That's a very, you know, sexy word that is being thrown around all the time, but I see like the exact understanding of product led differs.
Yeah, you know, as a product manager, it really appeals to me because, you know, that's the center of my world. So of course, I would love that, and I will have a specific understanding for it. But I'm trying to see, with my understanding, to expand it not just to my position, but to the entire organization, and then also to the buyers. Because really, at the end of the day, without the buyers, the customers and users, we can't really do much, or there is no really reason to do anything. So the idea here is, can we use the product as much as we can throughout the entire process of selling it, using it, and the operations of the organization. So how do we make everyone really involved in that? And the challenges over there, because mostly people are talking about product-led growth, and that's very specific to you know, the sales channels and how do I make it viral and get everyone to start using it and stuff like that. But it's a very difficult proposition sometimes for some type of products that are very heavy on either customizations or on specific data that is relevant to the organization or on configuration of specific flows and stuff like that. When you're talking about a product that is used by 1 or 2 people in the organization, if the organization is 10 people, you might be able to say, yes, we got a big chunk of that organization using it. But if the organization is 500 people or you know, 20,000 people and only 2 people are using it, there's not really much product led there. So the context is also really important there. And then the question is, how do we get the people that actually make the decisions in the client side to be able to see the value in it, and not just the users that are using it and, you know, they got a free trial or they got a free tier and then they use it, but then they can't really show the value to the rest of the organization. So how do we get that to those people that actually make the decisions? And I'm really thinking or talking about B2B mainly. So I think that probably there is another twist there for other type of products. But that's mainly my world, so that's where I usually go to. So again, getting those people that actually make those decisions to make those decisions by having an amazing product that, and then helping our organization, our company, to do that through the product. So how can we help the sales people to actually sell it in a way that will be product led? How do we help operations like customer support, customer success, even other type of back-end operations to help them with that?
Right, so let's stay in B2B for a bit, because this is where we both feel most comfortable. And you know, what you just said gives me the perfect foothold to ask a question that, well, I feel a bit embarrassed about it because I've been asking it so many times in the last couple of weeks to so many people, but I still feel like I didn't get, you know, an answer that would sort of elucidate it for me. So we're talking about product-led and the product itself having a certain value for the users, and users gradually discovering the value, more and more value in the product, ideally, right, which would allow them to justify the expense, right, and invest in it, and then hopefully see even more potential in using the product and upgrade either through, you know, usage-based pricing plans or, well, feature-based and job-to-be-done-based pricing plans. But I see in B2B, there are a lot of complex platforms, right, that cater to a lot of different jobs to be done that, you know, potentially have so much value in them, but they don't really leverage it enough for the users to discover it in-app. So to give you an example, like for instance, in marketing, keyword research tools like Ahrefs or SEMrush, right? Super complex platforms with a lot of different functionality. And I feel a bit kind of embarrassed about it. I probably use only 20% of the tool. And I know they keep adding new features. Sometimes I see their feature announcements somewhere, or, you know, I come across certain piece of content outside the product, right, that is, you know, educating the market about the use of a specific feature, but it still seems to be geared towards acquisition, right? So convincing people that they should buy the product in order to unlock this feature. But while I'm already inside, right, these new features don't really trickle down, right, for the existing users of the product. Why do you think it happens? Why do you think companies don't push more for feature discovery, right, to make a more compelling case for the existing users to, you know, keep discovering and unlocking more value in the product?
Yeah. One immediate thought that I have is that maybe they don't really understand product-led. So they understand it, they think they understand it, or at least they are following the traditional ways of marketing, where you market through outside the product in different ways and whatever it is. The strength of product-led is that you do everything through, or at least you try to do everything through the product as well. I'm not saying that they shouldn't do marketing outside of the product, but the part of the go-to-market plan should be really to introduce it inside the product, get people that their persona is relevant to that product, to that feature. So use segmentation and understand which users would really be, it will be useful for them to use, will benefit from that. And they have to do that through data they have in the system and through the original discovery of the feature. So if they introduce the feature that they didn't really do any discovery to start with, then of course they will not know who is it useful for. But when they do the right discovery and they understand, you know, their user base, and they have data about their user base, and they know that someone like you will benefit from it, they should definitely target you when you use the product to tell you, we have this new feature and here is the value it can give you, because they're supposed to know you. So maybe they don't understand product-led. I don't know anything about these specific products that you mentioned, but I'm sure there is more examples like that than good examples of people that do it right. And a lot of it is really understanding that it's a whole ecosystem, rather than different silos. You know, I have my sales, I have my marketing, which is a very traditional way of working. Product-led, part of it is really changing the culture of the organization, and changing the mindset of people about, what is possible and what can be done. I'm not blaming, the marketing or the salespeople. I think that a lot of the times it's the people like me, the product people, that don't know, what's available out there and what's possible to do.
Wow, this is fascinating. I just had a conversation with
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Michael of Avrio earlier today, and he's basically building a solution that will allow like cross-functional sharing of user discovery between different departments and different teams to facilitate the process
Mm-hmm.
of breaking down these communication silos
Mm-hmm.
and having a deeper understanding of the customer between the departments to actually work together towards the common goal of unlocking more value for the customer wherever they
Yeah.
are in the sales funnel or basically
Right.
the journey. So,
Right.
it would be fascinating to have a panel with a few of our, speakers and discuss it all together from like the
Mm-hmm.
different perspectives.
Right.
What you mentioned about like fewer products actually living and breathing the product-led philosophy is something that I've experienced. And, we kind of built User Pilot to facilitate this communication with the users at different stages of the user journey and like
Mm-hmm.
basically helping them unlock more value inside the product when they are ready for it. But we also see that the market, sometimes we're thinking, are we ahead of time, right? Because we sometimes feel that the market is not entirely ready for this for probably different reasons. What you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned and what Andrew mentioned earlier today, like lack of
Mm-hmm.
communication, right? That there is a lot of discovery that just falls through the cracks
Mm-hmm.
and is not utilized effectively across the organization. But also you mentioned something else, like actually understanding the users and their journey.
Mm-hmm.
So, product analytics is still pretty difficult, right? And,
Mm-hmm.
understanding the users, like their behavior, and then actually transferring this, translating this into actionable insights, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, super difficult. And sometimes I wonder, like the R&D in these companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
They probably have a certain product vision that might be based on the needs of certain user segments,
Mm-hmm.
but then they don't seem to go back to these user segments inside the app, right, to
Mm-hmm.
actually communicate the value they have created once they have
Mm-hmm.
created it.
Mm-hmm.
So there is this gap. And I wonder, do you think there is anything they could do to bridge this gap?
Um, yeah, I think that the core of you mentioned R&D, as a term, and
Mm,
R&D is very much usually geared towards, or at least traditionally, it gears towards the engineering end of things, and that's where people like Marty Kagan and Teresa Torres, they advocate for the trio, for the three people that has to be part of the discovery: the product manager, the engineer, and the UX UI designer.
mm,
And all three of them have equal weight and equal rights and equal you know part in this trio, because it's really important that we do think about these different things, and no one person can really think about all of them or be responsible for all of them, mainly because we have also different capabilities and different background and
mm,
expertise. So once we have this core team working together on the product, there is definitely that ability to think about, who are the users, where are they, how do we find what problem they have, what opportunities do we have to create solutions for them, etc. And once we go through that discovery process that way, we can definitely come up with solutions for the problems and know who they are, rather than just come up with a problem we thought is a problem, never really validating it, building a feature for that problem that we perceive as a problem, but then we didn't really know who we were building it for because it was never validated. So there is definitely a lot of steps that we are skipping, and it's really bad for us to skip because that's what create these gaps.
Yeah, gotcha. I also kind of touching upon what you just said about building features like without really making sure that the problem exists or is important enough for the user.
Mm-hmm.
I often hear the pushback that, well, if the user has like 20% product adoption or 10% product adoption, um, that is basically for a reason, right? And maybe not all users need to use all of the products, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, to some extent, you know, I might not even be aware. So it again depends on the stage of my awareness as a user customer, right? I might not
Mm-hmm.
even be aware that I have a certain problem, right? And it seems that the companies are usually going after, well, which is something I understand is a low-hanging fruit. They're
Mm-hmm.
users that are extremely, you know, problem aware, solution aware, even product aware, and are at this like consideration stage. But when we talk about converted users, so existing customers,
Mm-hmm.
right, they may still have these other undiscovered problems or problems that they are solving in some way, which is inefficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they are not getting enough value. I'm often getting this pushback that, well, these are not a priority, and you know it's better to go after new users who are problem aware than try to basically convince existing users that there is a better way to solve their problems, or that they may consider, for instance, looking into a particular solution that the company has just developed. What is your take on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because at the end of the day, um, the user has, or any one of us, we have jobs to do, right? So when you're referring to something like, I'm not aware about the problem that I have, is that a real thing or is that a perceived thing? So maybe it's not so much about I'm not aware about the problem, but I'm not aware that there is a better solution to solve something that I'm trying to solve anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm always trying to say is when you create a product, when you create a feature, don't create new problems to your users. Because then they will either don't like your product, or they will look for other solutions, or they will, cry about it all the time. So try to really solve the problem that they have, or try to give them a solution for a job to be done that they have. So that's why I'm kind of saying it's an interesting question, because are these companies trying to find problems where they don't exist, or are these problems companies trying to solve an already job that someone has in a better way? And that's probably how I will try to position it, that it is a better way to solve it because A, B, and C, you save more time, you're more efficient, whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, maybe there is a tendency to talk about the problems of, how they do it today with other products. So comparing it with other products, and these other products are problematic because A, B, and C, or whatever. So maybe it's just a positioning, exercise rather than anything else. There are also companies or products that are trying to invent or reinvent a whole new, market or category. These are all always interesting because it really depends on what stages you are looking at, etc. A good example for that is all the communication systems like Slack and Teams and stuff like that. I guess, when they started, I used to use HipChat by Atlassian before Slack. I don't know what were there before that. I just actually learned that Atlassian is not, I didn't know that, but they're not supporting, or they got off that category altogether some time ago. But was that really trying to solve a problem for people, or was it creating new problems? It's there is a balance there. I personally don't really like Slack. I'm probably in the minority because I think it creates more problems to me than anything. It creates a lot of noise. It creates a lot of other things that I don't like. But these companies came out and say, "Oh, we have a problem that you never knew you had, and we're going to fix it for you." Maybe,
Yeah.
probably some of them did.
Gotcha. And it's also interesting how, like this market penetration forces you to use a solution that you feel like you don't really want to use, but everyone else is using. So you kind of are ultimately forced to do it.
Exactly. Either you're forced to, or you have a FOMO or something
Yeah,
that is.
exactly.
Mhm.
I had the same impression about Zoom. So obviously it exploded during the pandemic. And I was like, why the hell do we need another, video conferencing solution? And I
Mhm.
wasn't such a big fan. It was like jamming for me, and there were like a lot of small product issues that I
Mm.
found really incredibly annoying. So
Mm.
it's improved significantly over the course of the last,
Mhm.
half a year or so. But at
Mhm.
first I was like, really? Do we really need to use it? So
Mhm.
I feel for you with Slack, but coming
Mhm.
back to the previous question, is it like a positioning issue? Is it a product issue, right?
Mhm.
This is super interesting. It just came to my mind that, what most companies seem to be doing now is they are creating products for like 20 different personas, right?
Mm.
That are solving 20 different problems of
Mm.
a lot of different personas. So they have these different jobs to be done, right? And then
Mm.
they are looking for these honey holes. So, the subsegment of this persona for whom this job to be done is particularly big problem, right? And then another segment for whom another job to be done is a big problem. And these B2B platforms, sometimes they grow into these humongous, platforms with a lot of different jobs to be done stacked. And I
Mhm.
just wonder, wouldn't they grow faster? And wouldn't some of the churn they have be, could be prevented if they focused on, for instance, catering to more jobs to be done of, one or two or three personas instead of
Mhm.
20.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
and the saddest thing that's happened to me is when I conducted a churn survey, and then in the reasons for leaving the product, I learned that a feature that was already there was missing, and that the user has found it incredibly frustrating. And I was
Mm.
like, oh no, right? It was
Mm.
already there. But to
Mm.
be fair, it was
Mhm.
put in such an counterintuitive place in the workflow that a lot of the users were not finding it.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
so what do you think? Would it be, how can we prevent this kind of churn when the users are not getting the value out of the product that in fact is in the product?
Yeah, I think you touched on two interesting points because I've seen it forever that companies are trying to jam as many features into a product to fit as many user personas or needs in
Mm,
there. It's definitely not a new thing. I've
yeah.
done it myself. I've been there, um, and there is definitely in recent years a more um, leaning towards specialization and focusing on one problem to solve and solving it really really good. And even in that scenario, you would have that problem like you mentioned, that a feature is hidden, is not well designed, and because of that, people cannot find it or they don't know where it is. So these are really two big topics to talk about.
Mm,
For the first one, I would say that there is I worked in both enterprise companies and startup companies, and usually startups would not have a lot of funds to buy these big systems to do everything in big platforms and whatever. So they will look for the cheaper options and usually those are products that do one thing and they try to do it well. But then you have a lot of different issues with your workflow and automation and making everything works together. And then on the other side, you have these platforms that do a lot of things in the workflow, and they may not do it the best way or perfectly, but at least you don't have those integrations issues or silos of data or things like that. And that's where it's part of it is a bit of a preference. Some people like it this way, some people like it that way. You can look at it also like you have a cell phone and you have all of these apps on your cell phone. Usually the apps are doing one thing very well. And then if you start to have apps that will do many, many different things, people will like, oh, why don't you break it to smaller apps? So the phone is like your platform, and the apps are your features in your platform, and they're being provided by different companies, different providers. But they're really, usually they are quite integrated because they're used on the same platform. So they have sometimes similar look and feel, similar features, how you interact with them. It's much harder to do on traditional, platforms like a computer with desktop applications or web applications and stuff like that. So I definitely lean, as a user, I lean towards more the platforms, but as a developer or a product manager, I lean towards the other one where it's more individual because it's easier to find and focus on something. So it's really, I think I have biases towards both of them. So I think it's a hard answer. It's a hard question. It's a very hard answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then, the other topic about how do you get, these features, it's really about this discovery, continuous discovery, and making sure we're not assuming anything about people will find this feature. We test it and test it and test it. That's really what the UX designer role in the trio, to make sure that it's feasible, that people will be able to use it. And if they cannot find a feature, that means they cannot use it. As simple as that.
Obviously, yeah, it's super interesting. As you said, it's a bit of a catch-22, and I've also been thinking a lot about it, right? On the other hand, we have this trend for unbundling, right? So basically dismantling these huge platforms like, G Suite, and taking one bit of it and creating a separate SaaS that does it better. On the other hand, as a marketer who works with a tech stack of 20, 30 tools, and then I need to glue them all together somehow and use another tool to basically manage the use of the 3 or 4 tools that are essential for just one part of the workflow, say producing content, right? And then we have Ahrefs, we have Surfer SEO, we have StoryChief, right? And then I use Asana to put them all together, so the person that's supposed to use them in a certain order actually knows about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are, as you said, the perspective of the business and the company, and then the perspective of the user can be very different.
Yep.
That's super interesting. We touched upon so many important philosophical questions here in this conversation. I'm really looking forward to your full talk. It will be basically presented at Product Drive 4th and 5th of October. So Moshe will be joining us among other speakers, and I hope you will all also join.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Amelia. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.